The quiet arrival. The transport shuttle Harmony docked with Nexus Station with barely a whisper of sound. Through the viewing port, Captain Sarah Chen watched the massive structure unfold before her, like a metal flower, blooming in space. Nexus Station was the diplomatic heart of the galaxy, a construction so vast it housed representatives from over 300 different species. Its gleaming spires and rotating rings caught the light of nearby stars, creating patterns that would have been beautiful if Sarah hadn't known what awaited her inside. Sarah adjusted her simple gray diplomatic uniform and checked her appearance, one final time. At 38, she carried herself with quiet confidence. Her black hair was pulled back in a practical style, and her dark eyes revealed nothing of her thoughts. To most observers, she appeared to be exactly what her credentials claimed: Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Assembly, a former military officer turned diplomat. What they couldn't see were the small scars hidden beneath her sleeves, or the way her hands naturally fell into positions that could become weapons in milliseconds. The docking bay that received her was enormous, designed to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and atmospheric needs. Sarah stepped off her shuttle carrying only a single black case and wearing a translator device that would allow her to communicate with the hundreds of species she would encounter. The air was thick with different atmospheric mixes, creating a slightly metallic taste that reminded her of thunderstorms back on Earth. As she walked through the arrival area, Sarah noticed how other beings reacted to her presence. Most simply stared with curious eyes. Humans were still a novelty in galactic society, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 8 years ago. To species that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, humanity was barely past crawling. A tall, crystalline being approached her with movements that seemed to flow like water. "Ambassador Chen," it said through her translator, "I am Resonance of Deep Waters, your assigned guide during your stay on Nexus Station." The being's voice carried harmonic overtones that made Sarah's bones vibrate slightly. "I must inform you that your quarters are located in Section 7. Sarah knew what that meant. Section 7 was where they housed representatives from species considered developing or probationary. It was the diplomatic equivalent of being seated at the children's table. "That's perfectly acceptable," she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure the view will be educational." As they walked through the station's corridors, Resonance of Deep Waters provided commentary about the various species they encountered. The 8-foot-tall Vex warriors, with their chitinous armor and multiple arms, dominated most spaces through sheer presence. The floating ethereals communicated through patterns of light that danced across their translucent forms. Mechanical beings called the Construct moved with precise, calculated steps that spoke of pure logic. The Hegemony Coalition currently holds 67% of the Assembly's voting power, Resonance explained as they passed a group of Vex officers. They have been the dominant force in galactic politics for over 3,000 years. Sarah nodded politely while cataloging everything she observed. The way the smaller species stepped aside when Hegemony members approached. The subtle positioning of security forces throughout the corridors. The fact that certain areas seemed to be off limits to beings like herself. This wasn't just a diplomatic station. It was a carefully controlled environment where power structures were maintained through both formal and informal means. Her quarters were small but functional, with basic amenities and a view of empty space. After Resonance left, Sarah began her real work. From her single black case, she removed items that appeared ordinary but served multiple purposes. A tablet that could hack into most computer systems. A pen that was actually a sophisticated recording device. A small mirror that could detect surveillance equipment. Within an hour, she had located 14 different monitoring devices in her quarters. She left them all in place. Let them watch a diplomat going about her routine. They had no idea what they were really looking at. Sarah's first formal appearance before the Galactic Assembly took place 3 days later. The Assembly chamber was a massive amphitheater, where representatives sat in sections arranged by their species' political influence. The Hegemony Coalition occupied the prime locations near the center, while newer or less powerful species were relegated to the outer rings. As Sarah took her place in the far outer ring, she heard whispered comments from various delegates. "Look at how small they are," said a voice she traced to a serpentine Naga representative. "How did such fragile creatures ever reach space?" "Probably stole the technology," replied a mechanical voice from the construct section. "Or found it by accident." "Hi, Chancellor Zephyr Prime," a Vex leader whose armor gleamed with ceremonial decorations called the session to order. "We welcome our newest member, the representative from Earth," he announced with barely concealed condescension. "Perhaps Ambassador Chen would like to address the assembly about humanity's aspirations?" Sarah stood gracefully and activated her voice amplifier. "Thank you, High Chancellor. Humanity is grateful for this opportunity to participate in galactic civilization. We come seeking knowledge, friendship, and mutual prosperity." A sound that might have been laughter rippled through the hegemony section. "How refreshingly naive," commented another Vex representative loud enough for everyone to hear. Sarah continued, as if she hadn't heard. "We understand that Earth's membership in this assembly is provisional, pending evaluation of our species' suitability for full participation in galactic affairs. We look forward to proving ourselves worthy of your trust." "More," whispered comments followed her return to her seat. Sarah caught fragments. "At least they know their place. Probably won't last a year before they beg to go home." Primitive species never adapt to real politics. After the session, Sarah attended the traditional reception in the Grand Hall. This was where real diplomacy happened, away from the formal proceedings. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, listening more than speaking, learning the subtle currents of power that flowed beneath the surface of galactic politics. It was during this reception that she first encountered Commander Thale Vex Prime, a member of the hegemony's inner circle. He was massive even by Vex standards, with bio-enhanced armor that seemed to absorb light. When he approached Sarah, other conversations in their immediate area stopped. "So," he said, his translated voice carrying an unmistakable threat, "Earth finally sends us an ambassador. Tell me, little human, do you truly believe your species belongs among the stars?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I believe every species has something to contribute to galactic civilization, Commander, even those who might seem unremarkable at first glance." Thale Vex Prime moved closer, using his size to intimidate. "Your world sits in a strategic location, near several important shipping routes. Some in the hegemony believe it would be unfortunate if humanity expanded beyond its current system." The threat was clear, but Sarah's expression never changed. "How interesting. I wasn't aware the hegemony had taken such a detailed interest in our remote corner of space." "Oh, we take interest in everything, Ambassador, everything." He leaned down until his armored face was inches from hers. "I suggest you remember that during your stay here." After he moved away, Sarah noticed how other diplomats looked at her with mixtures of pity and fear. She had just been marked by one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and everyone knew it. Later that evening, as Sarah reviewed intelligence reports in her quarters, she received an unexpected visitor. Her security system detected someone approaching her door, but when she checked, the corridor appeared empty. Then her door chimed softly. Sarah opened it to find a small, furry creature that barely reached her waist. Its species was unfamiliar to her, with large eyes and delicate hands. It spoke in rapid, nervous tones. "Ambassador Chen, please, I must speak with you privately. I am Pip Click Song of the Harmony Collective. My people's section is scheduled for discontinuation." Sarah stepped aside to let the creature enter. "What do you mean by discontinuation?" Pip Click Song wrung its hands anxiously. "The hegemony has marked 12 species for relocation from their home systems. The official reason is resource optimization, but we know the truth. They want our worlds for themselves. The Assembly will vote on this in 6 days, and the outcome is already decided." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "How many species are we talking about?" 12 now, but the list grows every year. They start with the weakest, the ones no one will miss, eventually. Pip Click Song looked up at her with terrified eyes. Eventually, they come for everyone who isn't part of their coalition. Why are you telling me this? The small being moved closer to the window, looking out at the stars. Because humanity is next on the list. Your species is scheduled for evaluation in 18 months. If you fail to meet their standards, Earth will be marked for quarantine. No ships in or out, no communication with the galaxy. You'll be trapped in your system until they decide what to do with you. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Humanity had been so focused on gaining acceptance into galactic society that they had walked directly into a trap. What kind of evaluation? Military capability, technological advancement, cultural, compatibility, resource management. But the standards are impossible to meet. No species has ever passed evaluation if the hegemony wanted them gone. Why should I trust you? Pip Click Song produced a small data crystal. Because I have proof. Meeting records, communication intercepts, financial transfers, everything that shows how the hegemony really operates. They've been doing this for millennia. Sarah took the crystal, feeling its weight like a stone in her palm. What do you want in return for this information? Help us. You're the only representative here who isn't already bought, threatened, or controlled by the hegemony. We can't fight them alone, but together, maybe we can find a way to survive. After Pip Click Song left, Sarah sat in her quarters staring at the data crystal. Everything about her mission had just changed. She wasn't here to establish diplomatic relations. She was here to prevent genocide. Her own species' genocide. She inserted the crystal into her secure tablet and began reviewing its contents. What she found made her blood run cold. The Hegemony Coalition wasn't just the dominant force in galactic politics. They were systematically eliminating any species that could potentially challenge their control. The evidence was overwhelming. Forged environmental reports justifying relocations, manufactured diplomatic incidents leading to military interventions, economic manipulations that drove entire civilizations to collapse. Sarah opened a secure communication channel to Earth. The message she composed was brief and coded, but its meaning was clear to those who would receive it. Wedding canceled. In-laws planning hostile takeover. Need immediate family conference. The reply came back. Within hours. Understood. Extended family already aware. Proceed with contingency plans. Remember your training. Sarah smiled for the first time since arriving at Nexus Station. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Earth's leadership had suspected something like this might happen, which was why they hadn't sent just any diplomat to the assembly. They had sent Captain Sarah Chen, formerly of Earth's Special Operations Command, a woman who had spent 15 years handling humanity's most sensitive and dangerous missions. The quiet diplomat routine had served its purpose. She had been underestimated, dismissed, and ignored. Now it was time to become something else entirely. Sarah began preparing for what was to come. From various seemingly innocent items in her quarters, she assembled tools and weapons that would have surprised her watchers. The mirror became a communication device. The pen became a data splicer. Her jewelry became a sophisticated sensor array. Tomorrow she would continue playing the role of Earth's inexperienced ambassador. But tonight, she began planning the systematic destruction of the most powerful political organization in the galaxy. The Hegemony Coalition had made one critical error in their calculations. They had assumed that humanity was as helpless as they appeared. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. The Hunter Awakens, Sarah's second week on Nexus Station, began with what appeared to be a routine diplomatic breakfast. Representatives from various species gathered in the Harmony Hall to discuss trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Sarah sat at a table with several other minor species diplomats, listening to their conversations while appearing to focus on her meal. The food synthesizers on the station could create approximations of cuisine from hundreds of different worlds. Sarah had chosen something that resembled Earth scrambled eggs, though the protein came from a completely different source. As she ate, she continued her careful observation of the power dynamics playing out around her. At the central tables, Hegemony representatives held court with their allies and subordinates. Commander Thalvex Prime was present. his massive form dominating the conversation. Sarah's enhanced hearing picked up fragments of their discussion despite the background noise. The evaluation protocols for the human system are already in development, Thale was saying to a group of Vex military officers. Chancellor Zephyr Prime wants to accelerate the timeline. Another Vex, this one wearing scientific insignia, leaned forward. Our analysis suggests their technological development is proceeding faster than initially calculated. They may present complications if we wait too long. Sarah felt her pulse quicken while maintaining her casual demeanor. She had been right. Humanity was being targeted for elimination, and the timeline was moving up. Their ambassador seems compliant enough, commented a third Vex. Perhaps we could use her to deliver an ultimatum, make the process appear voluntary. Thale Vex Prime's laugh was like grinding metal. That fragile little creature? She'll serve our purposes perfectly. Humans always break when pressed hard enough. Sarah finished her breakfast and excused herself from her table, walking toward the exit with unhurried steps. Once she was out of direct observation, she made her way to a maintenance access corridor she had scouted earlier. The station's service, tunnels provided routes between major sections that bypassed most security monitoring. 20 minutes later, she emerged in Section 12, where the Harmony Collective maintained their quarters. Pip Clicksong was waiting for her in a small meeting room that had been swept for surveillance devices. Ambassador Chen, the small being said nervously, I have troubling news. 3 more species were added to the discontinuation list yesterday. The vote has been moved up to tomorrow. Sarah absorbed this information while calculating new timelines. How certain are you about the voting schedule? Very certain. I have allies in the administrative staff who keep me informed. Pip Clicksong handed her another data crystal. This contains the complete voting schedule for the next month. You'll see that humanity's evaluation is now scheduled for next week, not 18 months from now. Sarah's jaw tightened. The hegemony was accelerating their plans across the board. What changed? Why the sudden rush? We believe they've detected some kind of threat. Increased security throughout the station, encrypted communications, emergency military protocols. Something has them frightened. Sarah had a good idea what that something might be. Earth's response to her coded message had been swift and comprehensive. Ships were likely already moving into position throughout human space. But if the hegemony struck first, none of that would matter. I need to get into the hegemony's secure communication center, Sarah said. Can your people help with that? Pip Clicksong's large eyes widened. That's impossible. The security around that section is absolute. Even authorized personnel require 3 different authentication methods. Let me worry about the security, I just need a way to reach the area without being detected. The small being thought for a moment. There's a maintenance shaft that runs close to the communication center. It's used for power conduit access. But Ambassador, if you're caught in there, I won't be caught. That evening, Sarah attended another formal diplomatic function, this time a cultural presentation by the ethereal Dominion. She sat through 2 hours of light pattern poetry, while mentally reviewing the schematics Pip Clicksong had provided. The maintenance shaft would get her within 50 meters of her target, but the final approach would require skills she hadn't used in 3 years. During the reception following the presentation, Sarah was approached by an ethereal named Luminous Dawnbreaking. The being's form flickered between various shades of blue and silver as it communicated through her translator. Ambassador Chen, I wanted to express my admiration for humanity's peaceful approach to galactic integration. So many young species arrive with aggressive postures and unrealistic demands. Sarah smiled politely. We believe in learning from those with more experience. The galaxy has much to teach us. Indeed, I hope your species will have the opportunity to learn and grow within our community. The ethereal's patterns shifted to deeper blues, though I understand there are some who question whether humanity is truly ready for full membership. The warning was subtle but clear. Even species allied with the hegemony were uncomfortable with what was being planned. Sarah filed this information, away for later use. We understand that acceptance must be earned, she replied. We're prepared to prove ourselves worthy. I hope it doesn't come to that, Luminous Dawnbreaking said before floating away. At 2 hours past midnight, Sarah made her move. She had disabled the surveillance equipment in her quarters using techniques that made it appear like routine, technical malfunctions. Her absence would be undetected for at least 6 hours. Moving through the station's service tunnels required skills Sarah hadn't used since her special operations days. The passages were narrow and filled with power conduits, atmospheric processors, and waste management systems. She navigated by memory and instinct, using minimal lighting to avoid detection. The Hegemony's communications center was located in the most secure section of the station. Sarah's enhanced sensors detected multiple layers of security as she approached. Motion detectors, thermal scanners, electromagnetic field monitors, and biological sensors. Any one of them could trigger alarms that would bring dozens of security personnel within minutes. Sarah smiled grimly. The Hegemony's security was impressive by galactic standards. By Earth special operations standards, it was adequate, but not impossible. From her utility belt, she withdrew tools that appeared to be standard diplomatic equipment, but served very different purposes. Her stylus generated targeted electromagnetic pulses that could disable sensors. Her breath mints were actually micro-drones capable of creating false readings. Her watch could hack into computer systems using quantum encryption protocols. It took her 47 minutes to breach the outer security perimeter. She moved like a shadow through corridors designed to detect any intruder. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. This was what she had been trained for, what she was truly meant to do. The communication center itself was a massive chamber filled with quantum transmitters capable of sending messages instantly across the galaxy. Sarah needed access to just one terminal to complete her mission. She chose a workstation in a corner that offered multiple escape routes. Connecting her modified tablet to the Hegemony's communication network required bypassing 17 different security protocols. Each one was a puzzle that would have challenged most computer specialists. Sarah solved them in sequence, drawing on techniques developed by Earth's most advanced cybersecurity teams. Once inside the system, she worked quickly. First, she copied every file related to humanity's evaluation and the Hegemony's expansion plans. Then she planted several sophisticated viruses that would activate on predetermined signals. Finally, she accessed the real-time communication logs between Hegemony, leadership, and their military forces. What she found confirmed her worst fears. The Hegemony wasn't just planning to isolate humanity. They were preparing for complete extermination. Military forces were already in position around Earth's solar system, waiting for the order to attack. The timeline for the assault was 72 hours. Sarah began transmitting the intelligence data to Earth using a quantum encrypted channel that would be nearly impossible to trace. The transmission would take 6 hours to complete, during which she would have to maintain her connection without being detected. She was 3 hours into the transmission when she heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Sarah's enhanced hearing identified multiple individuals moving with military precision, a security patrol ahead of schedule. Sarah had two choices: abort the mission and lose critical intelligence, or complete the transmission and risk exposure. She chose a third option. From her diplomatic case, she withdrew items that transformed her from a seemingly harmless ambassador into something much more dangerous. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, assembling tools that would have been unrecognizable to most observers. The security team entered the communication center expecting to conduct a routine inspection. What they found was a ghost that moved between shadows, neutralizing threats with silent efficiency. Sarah had spent years learning how to disable opponents without causing permanent harm, but these weren't training exercises. The first guard never saw what hit him. Sarah's strike to his neural center dropped him instantly but left him alive. The second guard turned at the sound of his partner falling, only to meet Sarah's modified stunner. The third guard managed to activate his communication device before Sarah's nerve strike paralyzed his vocal cords. Security breach in Communication Center 7, the automated system announced throughout the station. All security personnel respond immediately. Sarah had perhaps 10 minutes before the area would be swarming with Hegemony forces. Her transmission was 87% complete. She made another choice that would have surprised her diplomatic colleagues. Instead of fleeing, Sarah began preparing the communication center for siege. Her tools weren't just for infiltration, they were for combat. Within minutes, she had turned the chamber into a fortress, with multiple defensive positions and escape routes. The first wave of security forces arrived to find the communication center locked down and defended by someone who seemed to anticipate their every move. Sarah's voice came over the facility's intercom system, but it was no longer the polite tone of a diplomat. "This is Captain Sarah Chen, Earth Special Operations Command. I am conducting authorized intelligence gathering operations. Any attempt to interfere will be met with appropriate response." Commander Thale Vex Prime's voice boomed back. "Surrender immediately, human. You are surrounded and outnumbered." Sarah's laugh was cold and professional. "I'm exactly where I want to be, Commander. Your forces are welcome to test themselves against Earth military doctrine." What followed was a demonstration that changed how every species in the galaxy viewed humanity. Sarah held the communication center for 4 hours against increasingly desperate assault attempts. Her defensive systems disabled dozens of hegemony soldiers without causing fatal injuries. But her message was clear. Earth's representatives were not the helpless primitives everyone had assumed. When the transmission finally completed, Sarah activated the escape route she had prepared. The explosion that destroyed half the communication center was not meant to cause casualties. It was meant to send a message. By the time hegemony forces reached the chamber, Sarah was gone, leaving only a recorded message behind. "High Chancellor, Zephyr Prime," her voice said from the speakers. "Humanity thanks you for this educational experience. We've learned so much about galactic politics during our stay. We look forward to sharing our newfound knowledge with the rest of the galaxy." Sarah was already 3 levels away when they found the recording. She moved through the station's service, tunnels with new purpose. The diplomatic phase of her mission was over. Now began the part she was truly qualified for: warfare. The Reckoning. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly convened 18 hours after Sarah's escape from the communication center. The massive chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from 300 species demanded answers. High Chancellor Zephyr Prime stood at the central podium, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the chamber's lights, but his usual commanding presence seemed diminished. "Fellow representatives," he began, his translated voice carrying across the amphitheater, "we face an unprecedented situation. The human ambassador has revealed herself to be not a diplomat, but a saboteur and terrorist." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Sarah's attack on the communication center had been felt throughout the station. Many species representatives had experienced communication failures, delayed messages, and system malfunctions that seemed to originate from the damaged hegemony network. "Where is Ambassador Chen now?" called out Resonance of Deep Waters from the Crystalline Collective section. "That is being determined," Zephyr Prime replied stiffly. "Our security forces are conducting a comprehensive search." What the High Chancellor didn't tell the Assembly was that their search had been completely unsuccessful. Sarah had vanished into the station's infrastructure like a ghost. Worse, the viruses she had planted in their communication network were activating systematically, revealing embarrassing and incriminating information about hegemony operations to the entire galaxy. From her hidden position in a maintenance chamber deep within the station's core, Sarah monitored the assembly session through tapped communication lines. She had spent the past day establishing a network of surveillance points throughout Nexus Station, turning the hegemony's own security systems against them. Her secure tablet displayed a tactical overview that would have impressed Earth's military strategists. Every hegemony military unit within 50 light-years was marked on her screen, along with their movement patterns and communication protocols. The intelligence she had gathered during her infiltration was already being analyzed by Earth Command. Sarah activated her quantum communicator and established contact with Admiral Rebecca Torres, commanding officer of Earth's newly formed Stellar Defense Fleet. "Sarah, good to hear from you." Admiral Torres's voice came through clearly despite the massive distance. "Your intelligence package arrived 6 hours ago. We've been busy." "What's our status, Admiral?" "Better than expected. The hegemony has 47 ships positioned around our solar system, but they don't know about the defense platforms we've been building. More importantly, they don't know about the allies you've helped us identify. Sarah smiled grimly. The information from Pip-Click-Song and other oppressed species had revealed a network of civilizations ready to rebel against hegemony control. Earth's diplomats had been busy in the hours since her intelligence transmission, making contact with dozens of species that had been waiting for someone to make the first move. How long until the hegemony fleet reaches Earth? Sarah asked. At their current speed, 36 hours. But Sarah, we've got a bigger problem. Our deep space sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout the galaxy. The hegemony isn't just coming for Earth, they're launching simultaneous attacks on 12 different systems. Sarah felt her blood chill. The hegemony had decided to solve all their problems at once. What about the species on the discontinuation list? Already under attack. 3 worlds have gone silent in the past 4 hours. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 3 billion lives that might have been saved if she had acted sooner. Admiral, implement Protocol 7. There was a pause on the other end of the communication. Protocol 7 was Earth's most extreme contingency plan, one that had been developed in absolute secrecy by a small group of military planners who had anticipated exactly this scenario. Sarah, are you certain? Once we activate Protocol 7, there's no going back. They made this choice when they decided to commit genocide. Execute the protocol. Understood. Protocol 7 is active. Good luck, Captain. Sarah gathered her equipment and prepared to move to the next phase of her mission. She had 36 hours to prevent the total annihilation of her species and the systematic murder of billions of sentient beings throughout the galaxy. The diplomatic solution was no longer possible. Now it was time for war. Her first target was Commander Thale Vex Prime himself. Sarah found him in the hegemony's military command center, coordinating the attack fleets through secure communication channels. The center was the most heavily defended location on Nexus Station, surrounded by automated weapon systems and guarded by elite Vex warriors. To most infiltrators, it would have been an impossible target. To Sarah, it was simply another problem to solve. She approached through the station's atmospheric processing system, moving through air recycling ducts that hadn't been designed for human access. Her modified tools allowed her to bypass each security checkpoint, with techniques that would have seemed like magic to most observers. The command center itself was a massive chamber filled with holographic displays showing fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Sarah counted at least 200 hegemony ships engaged in active operations, with more moving into position for follow-up attacks. Commander Thale Vex Prime stood in the center of it all, his massive form directing the orchestra of destruction. Sarah watched him for several minutes, studying his movements and calculating her approach. When she moved, it was with lethal precision. The guards around the command center found themselves facing an opponent who seemed to anticipate their every action. Sarah's combat techniques were unlike anything in their training, fluid, adaptive, and ruthlessly efficient. She reached Thale Vex Prime before any alarm could be raised. The massive Vex commander turned to find a small human woman standing behind him, her diplomatic uniform replaced by close-fitting black armor that seemed to absorb light. "Commander," Sarah said quietly, "we need to talk." Thale Vex Prime reached for his weapon, but stopped when he felt something sharp against his throat. Sarah's blade was made from materials that could cut through Vex armor like paper. "I suggest you call off the attack on Earth," Sarah continued in the same conversational tone. "And while you're at it, recall your fleets from the other systems. You're attacking." "You're insane," Thale snarled. "Even if you kill me, the attacks will continue. You've only delayed your species' extinction by hours." Sarah smiled. "Commander, you're thinking like a soldier. I'm thinking like a strategist." She activated a small device on her belt. Throughout the command center, holographic displays began changing. Fleet positions shifted, communication channels opened, and status reports appeared from across the galaxy. "What is this?" Thale demanded. "This is what happens when you underestimate a primitive species," Sarah replied. "While you were focused on hunting me through your station, my people were implementing our real plan. The displays showed hegemony fleets throughout the galaxy, suddenly finding themselves surrounded by ships they didn't recognize. Earth's allies, the species that had been secretly organizing resistance to hegemony control, had revealed themselves, all at once. The Harmony Collective, the Crystal Mines, the Free Traders, the Independent Worlds. Sarah listed as she watched Thala's expression change. 47 different species, all tired of being pushed around by your coalition. They were just waiting for someone to make the first move. More displays activated, showing the space around Earth's solar system. The hegemony fleet that had been preparing to attack found itself facing not just Earth's defenses, but ships from a dozen different allied species that had been hiding in the system's outer reaches. Impossible, Thale breathed. Our intelligence indicated no significant military presence in the human system. Your intelligence was wrong about a lot of things, Sarah said. For instance, how long do you think humanity has really been traveling between stars? Thale Vex Prime's eyes widened as he began to understand. The official records say 8 years. The official records lie. Humanity has been exploring the galaxy for over 30 years. We've just been very quiet about it. We learned from watching species like yours what happens to civilizations that attract too much attention too quickly. Sarah activated another display showing Earth's actual military capabilities. The defensive platforms around the solar system weren't new constructions. They were part of a network that had been built over decades. The ships defending Earth weren't hastily assembled. They were the products of a secret military-industrial complex that had been preparing for this day since humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. You see, Commander, we knew about the hegemony's expansion policies long before we sent our first diplomat to make contact. We knew what you did to species that threatened your control, so we planned accordingly. The final display showed something that made Thale Vex Prime step backward in shock. Throughout the galaxy, human ships were decloaking near major hegemony installations. Not just a few ships, hundreds of them, armed with technology that had been developed in secret and tested against targets that the hegemony had never known were under observation. 30 years of watching, learning, and preparing, Sarah continued. We studied every hegemony military doctrine, analyzed every tactical pattern, infiltrated every communication network. While you thought we were crawling out of our primitive mud, we were actually studying you. Thale Vex Prime's communicator erupted with panicked reports from across the galaxy. Hegemony fleets were finding themselves outmaneuvered by forces that seemed to know their every move before they made it. Installations that had been considered impregnable were being neutralized by precision strikes that targeted specific vulnerabilities. This is impossible, Thale said, his voice shaking with rage and fear. No species develops this capability in just 30 years. Sarah's smile was cold and satisfied. You're still not understanding, Commander. We didn't develop this capability. We brought it with us. Humanity has been a spacefaring civilization for over 2 centuries. We just stayed hidden until we were ready. The truth hit Thale Vex Prime like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't discovered faster-than-light travel 8 years ago. They had revealed it. The primitive species that the hegemony had planned to eliminate was actually one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, one that had been secretly observing and preparing for contact. The asteroid mining operations in your outer systems, Sarah continued, those were actually human observation posts. The natural phenomena that occasionally disrupted your communication networks were field tests of our electronic warfare capabilities. The unexplained disappearances of some of your scout ships were intelligence-gathering operations. Sarah activated her communicator and spoke in clear, authoritative tones. Admiral Torres, this is Ground Zero. Execute Phase 3. Across the galaxy, the carefully coordinated operation entered its final stage. Human forces that had been positioned over decades of secret preparation began systematically dismantling the hegemony's military infrastructure. Their attacks were precise, targeting command centers, communication hubs, and strategic installations, while avoiding civilian populations. The key to the operation was information. Sarah's infiltration of Nexus Station had provided the final piece of intelligence needed to coordinate attacks on every major hegemony facility simultaneously. Without their command structure, the scattered hegemony fleets found themselves isolated and vulnerable. Your species, Sarah said to Thalvex Prime, made the mistake of believing your own propaganda. You convinced yourselves that might makes right, that advanced technology gives you the authority to decide which species live or die. But you forgot something important. She gestured to the displays showing human forces throughout the galaxy. There's always someone stronger. There's always someone smarter. There's always someone who's been watching and waiting for you to make a mistake. Thalvex Prime reached for his emergency communicator, but found his hand frozen as Sarah's blade pressed against his wrist. I wouldn't recommend calling for help, Commander. Your security forces are currently dealing with other problems. Throughout Nexus Station, the hegemony's control was collapsing. Sarah's allies among the oppressed species had simultaneously revealed themselves, seizing control of critical systems and preventing any coordinated response to the human offensive. Pip Clicksong's voice came over the station's communication system. Attention all representatives. The Hegemony Coalition's authority over this station is hereby revoked. All species are free to participate in the formation of a new galactic government based on equality and mutual respect. You planned this from the beginning, Thale accused. We planned for every possibility, Sarah corrected. We hoped for peace, but we prepared for war. When your coalition chose genocide, we were ready. High Chancellor Zephyr Prime's voice suddenly boomed through the command center speakers. All forces concentrate on the human positions, eliminate the terrorist. Sarah laughed. Chancellor, you might want to check your tactical displays before giving orders you can't execute. Zephyr Prime's image appeared on the central screen, his expression transforming from fury to horror as he absorbed the tactical situation. Hegemony, forces throughout the galaxy were in full retreat, their command structure in ruins, their fleets scattered and defeated. This is not possible, he whispered. We are the dominant civilization in this galaxy. We have ruled for thousands of years. You've ruled through fear and intimidation, Sarah replied. But you never actually conquered anyone. You just convinced them they couldn't resist. Now they know better. Sarah activated one final display, showing Earth itself. The planet appeared, peaceful and serene, its blue oceans and white clouds unchanged despite the war raging around it. But orbiting the planet were defensive installations that dwarfed anything the hegemony had ever constructed. Earth's population is 12 billion, Sarah said quietly. But only 1 billion of them live on the planet's surface. The other 11 billion live in orbital habitats, asteroid colonies, and deep space installations throughout our local region. We've been a galactic civilization longer than your coalition has existed. She turned to face both Thalvex Prime and the image of Zephyr Prime. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy, Chancellor. We want to free it. Every species deserves the right to determine its own destiny without fear of extinction from bullies like your coalition. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. The Hegemony Coalition, the most powerful political force in galactic history, had been defeated not by superior firepower but by superior strategy. They had been outmaneuvered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. What happens now? Zephyr Prime asked, his voice hollow with defeat. Now you learn what justice looks like, Sarah replied. Every species your coalition has oppressed will have a voice in determining your fate. Every world you've destroyed will be rebuilt. Every civilization you've erased will be remembered. She stepped back from Thalvex Prime, but her weapon remained ready. The old galaxy is ending, Chancellor. A new one is beginning. One where strength is measured not by your ability to destroy but by your willingness to protect. Not by your capacity for conquest, but by your commitment to cooperation. Admiral Torres's voice came through Sarah's communicator. Captain, all objectives achieved. Hegemony military forces have either surrendered or withdrawn. Allied fleets are securing key installations throughout the galaxy. Casualties? Sarah asked. Minimal on all sides, Your intelligence allowed us to neutralize their capabilities without requiring widespread destruction. Sarah nodded with satisfaction. Even in war, humanity had chosen precision over devastation. Begin Phase 4, Admiral. It's time to build something better. As reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy, the scope of the transformation became clear. In a single day, humanity and its allies had ended the hegemony's 3,000-year reign and established the foundation for a new galactic order. The Galactic Assembly was dissolved and replaced with the Confederation of Free Worlds, where every species had equal representation, regardless of their military or economic power. The new government's first act was to establish the Galactic Protection Accord, which declared that no species could be eliminated, relocated, or quarantined without the unanimous consent of all member civilizations. Sarah stood in the newly renamed Harmony Station, watching as representatives from hundreds of species worked together to draft the documents that would govern their shared future. The sight of former enemies collaborating on solutions to galactic problems filled her with a sense of accomplishment that no military victory could match. Pip Click's song approached her as she stood by one of the great viewing windows. Ambassador Chen, or should I say Captain Chen, my people wish to thank you for what you've done. I'm just Sarah now, she replied with a smile. And I didn't do this alone. Every species that chose to stand up to the hegemony deserves credit for this victory. What will you do now? The small being asked. Earth has been offered the position of first speaker in the new confederation. Sarah shook her head. Earth will participate as an equal member, nothing more. We've seen what happens when one species claims authority over others. She looked out at the stars, thinking of the long journey that had brought them to this moment. Besides, I have a feeling the galaxy is going to need diplomats more than warriors in the years ahead. Real diplomats this time, not soldiers pretending to be peaceful. As if summoned by her words, resonance of deep waters approached with a small group of representatives from various species. Sarah, the crystalline being, said, "We've been discussing the structure of the new government. We would like to offer you the position of chief mediator for interspecies disputes." Sarah considered the offer. After years of serving as humanity's hidden weapon, the idea of openly working for peace appealed to her. "I accept, but with one condition." "What's that?" Sarah's smile was warm and genuine. "No more secrets. From now on, diplomacy means exactly what it says. We solve our problems with words, not weapons." The assembled representatives agreed unanimously. As Sarah looked out at the stars once more, she reflected on how much had changed in just a few weeks. The galaxy was far from perfect. There would be disputes, misunderstandings, and conflicts in the years ahead. But for the first time in millennia, those problems would be solved through cooperation rather than conquest. Humanity had revealed itself not as the galaxy's new masters, but as its protectors. And in doing so, they had created something that had never existed before. A truly free galaxy where every species could determine its own destiny among the stars. The quiet diplomat had become the galaxy's greatest warrior, and then chosen to become its greatest peacemaker. It was, Sarah thought, exactly what humanity was meant to be.